Well, welcome. This is, as I said, the beginning of a 3-week series. Every summer, I have what I call summer school, and I always call it the Summer of Love. So this is Summer of Love 2013. This summer, within that theme, is this little series here, which I call All Things Are Possible. And actually, of course, we all know that that's part of Scripture. All things are possible. With God, all things are possible. It's from that little scripture quote that says, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And the Course in Miracles uses that, almost that exact same phrase several times throughout. In fact, it is so important that even before you get to the very, very beginning of the Course, if you even just look in the preface on page 1, it actually uses that phrase about the scribing of the Course, this process by which Helen and Bill wrote the Course in Miracles, or really channeled the Course in Miracles. So I want to read just that line. Well, I'll read this paragraph here. A Course in Miracles began with the sudden decision of two people to join in a common goal. Their names were Helen Schuckman and William Thetford, professors of medical psychology at Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons in New York City. It does not matter who they were, except the story shows that with God, all things are possible. They were anything but spiritual. Their relationship with each other was difficult and often strained, and they were concerned with personal and professional acceptance and status. In general, they had considerable investment in the values of the world. Their lives were hardly in accord with anything that this Course advocates. So, that's fabulous to know. Like, you don't have to be spiritual in order to have these miraculous experiences happen. But what you do have to be is willing. And that's really this joining of Helen and Bill, was this willingness to not suffer anymore. And that was really what brought this on, was, I don't know, let me just see a show of hands of anybody here who has not yet suffered enough. Just hold up real high. No? Okay. You're in the right place then, because the Course in Miracles is about the end of suffering, but the end of that suffering comes from our willingness. And of course, Helen and Bill, for those of you who don't know, worked together and had a very acrimonious, at many times, relationship, not only with each other, but within the departments, within the university, all of this stuff. And at a certain point, Bill got fed up with that and made this kind of impassioned speech to Helen that what they were doing was not working. And this is something for us always to look at in our lives, is because a lot of times what we tend to do in life is, if something is not working, rather than question what we're doing, we tend to just double our efforts. Right? This thing that clearly isn't working, we just need to try it harder. The problem isn't with the plan, the problem is I'm just not trying hard enough. So we just keep doing the things that don't work harder, or we realize, basically the ego tells us, well, it's really not the plan's fault, it's that you are surrounded by assholes. And they are not participating properly in the plan. So you just need to find new people to work this same unworkable plan with. So, and that's the story of our lives. We just go from town to town, job to job, relationship to relationship, trying this plan. So they had done that for years within their relationships and their work lives. And Bill had begun to read some Eastern tradition things and things about meditation and things about being positive. And he gave Helen this impassioned plea that he felt that really what they needed to do was change the way they were thinking. They needed a more positive approach and to start to look at what was good in other people and in their situation than what was bad. And all he knew for sure was that what they were doing wasn't working, and there must be another way. And Helen, quite unexpectedly, joined him and said, well, in fact, she took his hand and she said, I want to help you find that better way. And what the Course in Miracles teaches us is that anytime two people join together in a goal or an intention that is pure like that, that is a holy relationship, it's a holy instant. The Holy Spirit then begins immediately taking over that relationship. And so it was that willingness. And of course, this went on for many years, and it was not smooth sailing. Like you would think, oh, that'd be so, I would love that if that would happen to me. If I had some friend or somebody who would join with me in this better way. Well, in the Course in Miracles, in the teacher's manual, it says, if you found that person, it doesn't mean you'd like them. It talks about 3 levels of relationships, and it says they're not better or worse, but the first level of relationships just seems like a casual thing where it's just a word or two, it's just a smile at somebody, it's not meant to last, but in that moment there's joy exchanged between people. And the second level of relationships is where there's a more sustained relationship, goes on for a certain amount of time, a week, a month, 10 years, whatever. And then there's the third level, which seems like they're lifetime relationships. And it says right in there, it doesn't mean you'll like each other. A lot of times, this is the family we're born into, right? Lifetime teaching and learning opportunities. And the Course in Miracles says that those lifetime relationships are pretty rare because what it indicates is that both people are sort of at the same level for maximal learning. And what really determines how those relationships will be experienced is how much willingness there is in that relationship to let go of our story, our fears, and really basically just our ego thinking, okay? So what tonight is about is what I've sort of found over many, many years. I've been lecturing on the Course in Miracles since 1990. And so there are certain things that I have found throughout that experience of our spiritual path as I see it. And so I call this the 4 pillars of the temple of the urban mystic. We are urban mystics. I love that. I'm your miracle mentor. And we are urban mystics. A mystic is just someone who has a direct relationship with God. That's all mystic is. Mystic is just somebody who senses and has a direct relationship with spirit, whatever you call it, whether you call it God or whatever you call it. And so that's all of us, and that really is the purpose of the Course, is for us to have that relationship get deeper and deeper all the time. And so what I found was, as I've worked with myself and worked with other people for years, is that our issues tend to come down spiritually to one of 4 categories: love, law, grace, or action. So that's what we're going to be covering in these 3 weeks. And tonight we're going to cover love, and then also there's action within that, because the action is at the very beginning of the Course in Miracles in what they call your text, which is the original before it was edited, so it's just slightly different in some places in the beginning. In the beginning of that book, there's a section that reads, the motto of the Great Crusade is, listen, learn, and do. Listen, learn, and do. Now, in what I call New Thought or metaphysics, we're pretty good at the listen. We read a lot of books, we got a lot of classes like this, we listen to a lot of tapes, we gather up a lot of information. We're information gatherers a lot of times, spiritually. Just look at your bookshelf. Should tell you all you need to know about gathering information. Then the second part is learn. Learn, right? Really learn what is in there. Not just actually, read it and think about it and be able to talk about it in cocktail parties. Oh yes, I do the Course all the time. Love is going to save the world, But we actually know what the book says. It's a pretty big book. Then the last part, that's where we have trouble. With the do. The listen, learn, and do, where the rubber meets the road, where it really is about, are you really going to do what the Course asks you to do? Are you going to do what you know to do? A lot of us know about a lot of things, but knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power. It only becomes powerful if it is applied somewhere, right? So action runs across the board. There is always sort of something to do metaphysically in Course in Miracles terms, which is different than the kind of doing that the ego has us focus on. Because that's always the first question the ego asks in any situation, any upset, anything is, what are we gonna do? What are you gonna do? What will we do? What should we do? Then we call people, what do you think I should do? So that's not the kind of doing that we're talking about. When the Course in Miracles is talking to us about doing, it means within our consciousness, 9 times out of 10. So when it tells us to do something, a lot of times it doesn't even mean literally physically do that. Like there are places in the Course in Miracles where it will say then to your brother, but don't say that, because your brother will think you're crazy. It means say that mentally. So it will say then to your brother, and then it will say something that you would obviously not say to a person because they would think you were a lunatic. But it means in your mind say, I see the Christ in you, I see the love in you, I release you from my grievances, whatever it's saying. But most of what the Course in Miracles is telling us to do is not a physical thing. It is a mental shift. The Course in Miracles is a shift from thinking fearful thoughts to thinking loving thoughts. So within that realm of love, this is the action sort of questions that I ask people to see, is this a love problem? Is this a spiritual law problem? Is this a grace problem? And then the action comes within there. So these are the questions that we sort of go over within the action realm of, is this a love problem? Do I need to forgive myself or another? That's a very basic Course in Miracles thing because, of course, the Course in Miracles is all about forgiveness. So in any situation, you can tell you have a love problem if there's somebody you have a grievance against. And by somebody, I mean it can also be a corporation, it can be an arm of the government, it can be whatever. So that's the first question. If it is a problem of forgiveness, then what do you do? What's the action? You start forgiving. You start releasing the grievance. Am I closing my heart off? That's the next question. Am I closing my heart off to try to protect myself? And of course, if you are, what do? You open your heart. You open your heart. Now, that's very fearful for us. The Course in Miracles says you're not really afraid of fearful things, you're afraid of love. Marianne always used to say, but you don't know that till you've dated us a while. Right? We act like we really want love, but the Course in Miracles says, the ego is very engaged in the search for love. It's all about the search for love, but its motto is seek but do not find. So we're constantly just going, no, there's no love here, there's no love here, there's no love here, right? So we stop saying, am I closing off my heart in this situation? Am I indulging in attack thoughts? Am I indulging in attack thoughts? That's a love issue. So now this is not just about other people, this is about yourself too, right? Am I indulging in attack thoughts about myself? If so, then Kenneth Wapnick, who helped in the editing of the Course in Miracles and is really a Course in Miracles scholar, says you can boil the whole Course in Miracles down to 2 words. Be kind. Sometimes I switch that around and say, don't be an asshole. It just depends on what mood you're in. I had that as a post-it on my desk for a long time. It just said, Jacob, don't be an asshole. And that stopped me from making a lot of emails. Someone would write me and I would be ready to write them back. I'd see that little post-it that said, don't be an asshole. I'd be, damn. But I've evolved. Now it just says, be kind, right? All right. Am I being defensive in order to protect myself? Course in Miracles, major part of the Course in Miracles is in my defenselessness, my safety lies. The Course in Miracles says you literally create what you're defending against. You are literally creating what you are defending against. So you stop to see, am I being defensive? If so, the answer to that is being vulnerable. I want love without vulnerability. Let me know how that works out. Right? Am I busy strategizing rather than being present? Love does not strategize. Strategy is a military word. If you have a strategy in some area of your life, it means you are at war in that area of your life. If you have a financial strategy or a health strategy, you are at war. I know that upset a lot of you already. Strategy is a military term. So am I busy being, somebody wrote me an email last week about she's in the middle of a painful divorce after almost 30 years of marriage, and she feels like a lot of her friends betrayed her and went with her husband, and she was trying to figure out, when I see them at the country club, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. When I pass them in the hallway, do I say hello? What do I do? That's strategizing. That's I'm going to figure out beforehand what I'm going to say. So I reminded her of a lesson in A Course in Miracles, which is, I place the future in the hands of God. That's radical defenselessness, and that is a release from strategizing. That doesn't mean that you don't make plans. I mean, I planned to be here tonight, right? But they are non-attached plans because you don't believe that your salvation lies in it working out the way you wanted it to. That's the kind of attachment that we want to be healed from. We make plans. You know, in the Bible it says, take no thought for the morrow, what you will eat, what you will drink, what you will wear. And Joel Goldsmith, the mystic Joel Goldsmith, says what that really means is take no anxious thought. Take no fearful thought. Of course you're going to think about things in the future. It's that you're not attached or worried. You've placed the future in the hands of God. Right? Is this all making sense? Okay. All right. Am I withholding love and approval from someone close to me or myself? Am I withholding love or approval? And of course, the action step there is give it. The very thing you don't want to give, that's what you're going to need to give. That's all of us. Have you seen how this already brings up a lot of unwillingness? And why the word willingness is such a big deal in the Course in Miracles. Are you willing? Or we used to say all the time, are you willing to be willing? If you're not willing yet, let's at least be willing to be willing. I'm on my way to willingness. I'm not at willingness yet, but I'm on my way to being willing. All right. Am I coming from kindness and walking in love? Kindness, 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 kindness. We live in a time, I don't know if it's always been like this, but it certainly is indicative of the time that we live in right now, in which we like to sort of seem witty, clever, cynical. So we're kind of snarky a lot of times. We don't want to seem naive. We don't want to seem vulnerable. We don't want to seem open. We don't want to seem weak. The Course in Miracles says you think that love is weakness and that hate is strength. That's what the ego sort of has. I hate that. Oh, I love that. I don't want to really let people in that way. So this idea of being kind is, you know, it would be easy to love people if they were not so unlovable. That's the problem, right? Is we want to be loving and then they just are so not lovable in this moment. I did my meditation this morning. I did my workbook lesson. I said my prayer. I came here with all good intentions, and then you said that one thing that makes it impossible to love you. Right? So we start to see that all of that is just resistance. It's just the resistance to love within us. And what dissolves the resistance is willingness. I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to have a miracle here. I'm willing to let go of my grievances. I'm willing to let go of all of the evidence that I have. I mean, really, at a certain point, you just realize that you're just better off to just release all the hostages at once. Instead of this going through one little grievance with one little person at a time, just get up every morning and just mentally open the jail cell and say, "Get out, everyone. You're all free. I don't even want to know what you did. Just go." If I start thinking about what you did, I'm going to have second thoughts. Blanket forgiveness is really the way to go. Here are our affirmations for this series. It's 2 of them. The first one is, more than ever before, I am willing to love and be loved. More than ever before, I am willing to love and be loved. More than ever before, I am willing to love and be loved. That's your first affirmation. The second one is, all things are possible with God. So when anything confronts you, that's what you come up with. Any situation that comes up where you start being afraid, where you start being worried, where you start being angry, with God, all things are possible. With me, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And more than ever, I'm willing to love and be loved. Those phrases will start to radically change your consciousness. They'll start to radically change your consciousness as you actually use them. But it's another aspect of do. Listen, learn, and do. Right? It's not enough to just know it and carry it around with you. It's do you do it then when you need it? So those are our affirmations for the series. Okay. Now, the reason we started out with love, and what's so important about love, is, to me, as a Course in Miracles student, love is the why of everything. Next week, we'll talk about metaphysical law. So we'll talk about things like the law of attraction, cause and effect, all things that are also in the Course in Miracles. So law is the how, but love is the why. So that when we think about what it is that we want to do at any given time, whether it's with our whole lives, with the next section of our lives, with today, the day ahead of us, that what we want is for love to be at the center of everything. Because that will save you so much suffering and so much time and energy. If what you're really coming from is the idea that the why of this is love. The why of this is love. So whatever this is, the job that I want, well, because I want to express love through my work. Now, when I talk about love, I'm not talking about affection, because that's just an aspect of love. I'm not talking about sentimentality. I'm not talking about a group hug. Love, in Course in Miracles, is what we are. The Course in Miracles says, teach only love, for that is what you are. And that's why the search for love is so hopeless, because we have basically left home to find what is at home. We literally are the love that we're looking for. We are the love that we seek. And so much of what we pray for, in many ways, is wasted energy, because we're praying for what we already have but have not activated. If this table was full of gifts, and one of them was that clock that's there, but it's in the box, and I don't open it, I can be like, what time is it? I never know what time it is. God, I would like to know what time it is. I'm affirming that I know what time it is. That's up to me. The Course in Miracles says that the most profound prayer that we pray is one of gratitude for what has already been given. And in the gratitude for what has already been given, it begins to be activated. So think about whatever it is that you would like to experience in your life and begin to consider that it's already there within you, that it will not come from the outside. The outside can reflect it. Right? It can reflect your prosperity. It can reflect healing and wholeness. It can reflect love. It can reflect all of these things. But that's not the source. And this is a perfect town to see how we get so lost in the idea that it's all out there, trying to get acknowledgement, trying to get a job, trying to get fame, trying to get success, trying to get money. All of these things. The Course in Miracles is very clear about this. It says, you must have noticed an outstanding characteristic in every end that the ego has chosen as its own. Once you have achieved it, it has failed to satisfy you, and so you are forced to shift ceaselessly from one goal to another so that you will continue to hope that it can yet offer you something. So it's not that the things out there don't gratify us when we get them. They do for a minute. They do for a little while, and then we go, well, now what? That was fun. Sometimes we even get to the point where we swear, no, if I get this, that is it. I will not want anything else ever again. I swear I'll be totally satisfied forever. Right? And it never lasts. I heard what really brought this home to me I don't even remember what it was on, but I was watching a little bit of LaToya, as one does. I don't know what show she was on, but I was watching some LaToya. And she was talking about Michael. And she was talking about when, and I don't remember the very beginning of the story, except that she was saying at the beginning of the story that he had come home with her, and this was when they were spending a lot of time together. So I think it was sometime around after he had recorded Off the Wall, which I think is the first album that he did kind of after he wasn't with the Jackson 5 anymore. And he had come home from some event or something where I don't know if he hadn't won any awards or something like that. So he said to LaToya, he made sort of this profound announcement that he was going to do something so huge and so amazing that it was going to redefine music and the whole industry. And he really went away for a few years to do this, and he was saying he was gonna come back and he was gonna win every award there was, and people were gonna love him, and he was gonna be honored, and it was just gonna be amazing, and so on and so forth, which of course is exactly what happened. Right around that same time also was when he started having all the plastic surgery on his face. Now, the reason that we talk about the idea of love is the why is because of what we saw unfold from that very story. Because once he achieved everything that he set out to achieve, probably even more so than he actually set out to do, he then spent the rest of his life trying to recreate that experience. Not ever really feeling satisfied of, I did that, because it did not come from love. It came from a sense of, I need something from the outside. I need awards to validate me. Obviously, he had, allegations, allegedly, abuse from his father and no childhood and all of this kind of stuff that sort of fostered a sense of not being good enough, self-hatred, all of those things that the ego basically fosters within us. And the mind then says, well, the way to fix this is to get people to give me what I don't feel myself. And it cannot be done. The world cannot give us what we are unwilling to give ourselves. Because even if they do, it will never feel that way for very long. And so, one of the things she talked about, she said he would go up in this room in one of their houses that they were in and tap dance for 3 hours at a time so that he could build up the stamina to be able to sing and dance without being breathless. Well, of course, as you get older and life marches on and so on and so forth, this was part of the reason that he had to do the amount of drugs that he did, was in order to have the energy to keep doing things, to deal with pains and aches in the body, all of this stuff that you're doing to get something out there that will never satisfy you. It didn't just come from, even though he had all this brilliant talent, the idea was, I'm going to create something that's going to get the world's attention. It wasn't from, I have something inside of me that is so full of love and joy that I must let it out. And it doesn't matter what the world thinks about it. People will like it or not like it, but I will be complete within the process of it myself. And that's the thing we look at all the time is, why am I doing this? If it's not love, it will lead to some level of suffering for us. If we're in a relationship because we want a baby, right? If we're getting married so that we'll have safety in our old age, right? If all the things that we do to get something, a get mentality is not a receptive mentality. So we put love at the center of everything, and then everything that comes from that, see, that's why that comes first. Because if we just go into, what's the life I want to create? The mind will just go into, right? I want this much money, I want a house like this, I want to have this kind of a body, I want to have this kind of a mate, I want to travel around here, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. And if you don't stop and say, but why? Why do you want to do that? Because if you're not clear on the why, then you may just be chasing after something that makes you crazy. That makes you completely crazy. So here's what the Course in Miracles. Now, first of all, what is love? I have no idea. I have no idea exactly what it is that I could say in words, but we know the experience of it. And within Course in Miracles terms, the experience of love is oneness. When we say love, we tend to think of affection. But really, in spiritual terms, what we're talking about when we talk about love is the complete dissolving of the idea that we are separate from other people. And that's why early on in the Course in Miracles it says, if you have any problem at all, it's that you feel you are separate from God, separate from Source, right? Separate from other people, separate from life. So the Course in Miracles, the introduction says, this course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. Our natural inheritance is love, and what we are is love. Therefore, anytime we're not feeling love, it's because we're experiencing one of the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And that usually is some kind of grievance, some kind of fear. We're mad at somebody, we're mad at ourselves, we're worried about ourselves, we're in fear over our children. Something is happening that's blocking that experience of love. That's why the Course in Miracles says miracles don't do anything, miracles undo. So I'm going to push you a little to start nagging yourself with questions like the ones we've started with tonight, like why am I wanting such and such? What is that about? What is that for? But I also want you to start thinking about, in broad terms of your life, what am I learning? You know, in spiritual circles, we hear this all the time. Oh, I'm learning a lot. Really? What? Sometimes we just say that and we don't even know what the heck it means. I'm learning, I'm going to have a lot of lessons. What are they? You know what people say a lot of times is patience. Patience is not a lesson. Patience is how you go through a lesson. But patience itself is not a lesson. When people say, what are you learning? Patience, what they mean is, that's an ego thing to say. Because when you say, I'm learning patience, what you mean is, I'm surrounded by assholes. That's what you mean when you say, I'm learning patience. Patience is not a lesson. Patience is how you go through a particular lesson, but it is not a lesson in itself. And so it's for us to look and see all the time, what am I learning? Because really, this is, for us, this is a classroom. Earth is a classroom. The Course in Miracles uses all basically university language, right? It's curriculum, teacher, student, lessons. It's all about learning, 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 learning. Now, the Course in Miracles says it's not up to you what you learn, but only whether you learn through joy or through pain. So that's number one, is decide right now that you are a joyful student. That when you think about your lessons, I am a joyful student and I am joyfully learning. Focus on that. Then you start looking at, what am I learning? What is the lesson here? Because the way that A Course in Miracles ends, which is on page 666, that's how you'll never forget it. Page 666 of the text. This is the very last, the ending chapter of A Course in Miracles. This has been, I swear, I've said this so much in the last month. You know, I don't know how many of you saw the movie Cloud Atlas. How many of you saw that movie? Oh my God, okay, that movie just changed my whole life. It's a really long, it's a commitment. It's almost 3 hours long. But worth it. And it's got a lot of people. Susan Sarandon is in it, and Halle Berry is in it, and Tom Hanks is in it, and Hugh Grant is in it. And it really goes like the whole history of time. And so it is all of the lead people play various parts reincarnated through history. And so sometimes they're a different race, sometimes they're a different sex. You know, like Halle Berry is a white man, like literally, like you'd see as a complete. But what was fascinating to me, because it goes right along with the Course in Miracles, is that even though they were reincarnated, a completely different body, they had the same basic personality throughout, which meant they had the same lesson every lifetime. That's why it's kind of important to think about what you're learning. Think about what you're learning. See, the Course in Miracles says, free will does not mean, this is in the introduction, free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. Right? That's like college. So you take the class, you're in the class. Life is whatever is your lesson in this class. So then it says you can elect what you want to take at a given time. So what most of us do is we get into the class and then we get to that point that we always don't like, and we say, I don't like this teacher, I'm dropping this class. We don't say, oh, I'm really gonna, this is where I always get, this is always the hard part for me. We go, this teacher, and I don't like the temperature in here, and this is the wrong chair, and all these students don't really get who I am, they don't honor who I am, they don't understand me, they're not like me, I'm too different, I need to find people, I'm gonna take this class later. So you saw in this movie lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and at one point, this was like a brick to my forehead. Halle Berry, this was like in the 1970s, and she's in the midst of this big mishigas, and she says to whoever, I can't remember who was next to her, but she said, now she was talking about just the lifetime that she was in. She wasn't aware of her other lifetimes. But she said to this guy who was next to her, she said, why do we keep making the same mistakes over and over again? And she's thinking, like, in this lifetime, but you're like, yeah, this is your 8th lifetime of this same stupid lesson that you keep taking over and over again because you don't know it's a lesson. So we need to ask ourselves, what am I learning here? What is this lesson about for me? Now, so what it says on page 666, under the section, Choose Once Again. This was one of Helen's favorite parts of the Course. So I'm going to skip down. Trials are but lessons that you failed to learn, presented once again, so where you made a faulty choice before, you now can make a better one, and thus escape all pain that what you chose before has brought you. Dang it. Any trial in your life, when there is a trial that comes up in your life, particularly where you go, oh, this has happened before. Now, it doesn't even mean this exact thing has happened before, but the button it pushed, you go, oh, this is a familiar button. See, I wrote this in my first book, Invocations. I said, the ego's idea of prayer is to say, dear God, send me people who do not push my buttons. But really, the universal plan is to send people with big fat fingers who, no matter what they do, oh, I'm pushing a button, I didn't mean to, I can't stop myself, what? So a lot of people think, well, my lesson here is to stop attracting people who push my buttons. Never realizing the lesson is to ask yourself, what the fuck do I have all these buttons for? Right? It's like, I finally figured out the real problem is that I have all these buttons. That's what relationship is. You know, we're always looking, you know, when you write your soulmate shopping list, it is always somebody who will not push any of your buttons. And that is not the right person for you. Stop making that stupid list. It's a waste of paper. Ellen Kreidman, I love her, she's a psychologist who used to say, if two people in a relationship agree on everything, one of those people is not necessary. Right? It's like you might as well just get a mannequin that is your exact physical type, put a little talk box in it, and pull a string every now and then that says, you know, you're right. Like, that is not a relationship, that's masturbation, basically. That actual relationship, that's why opposites attract, right? That's why opposites attract so much. And the thing that attracts us in the beginning is the fact that they're so different. And then that's what we will crucify you for later, right? You know, you'd be like, I'm a rigid, controlling person and everything's on time. And so I meet this free spirit who just really ignites that part of me that's always needed to be set free. And we just start dating and it's so fabulous. I tell everybody, it's so wonderful. I left home without my phone or my date book or anything. And we just went away. And then 2 years later, it's like, what an asshole this guy is. He never plans anything. I never know if he's coming or if he's not coming. We can't plan a vacation. We can't do anything. So the Course in Miracles says that, you know, so that's what not necessarily diametrically opposed opposites, but there's always some aspect that's opposite. A night person with a morning person, a spender with a saver, right? Someone who's very, very social with someone who never leaves the house. I mean, it's all, you just see this over and over and over again, and the idea there for the ego is this is the wrong person and the wrong situation, right? Instead of going, this has happened before. What am I learning here? I'm supposed to grow joyfully, right? What's the lesson here? The lesson here is, what am I doing with this button that gets pushed every time that person does whatever is the unthinkable thing, right? So he says, trials are but lessons that you failed to learn, presented once again, so where you made a faulty choice before, you now can make a better one, and thus escape all pain that what you chose before has brought to you. In every difficulty, all distress, and each perplexity, Christ calls to you and gently says, my brother, choose again. He would not leave one source of pain unhealed, nor any image left to veil the truth. He would remove all misery from you whom God created, alter unto joy. He would not leave you comfortless, alone in dreams of hell, but would release your mind from everything that hides his face from you. So everything basically is a lesson in love. There's a whole chapter in the Course called The Lessons of Love. So our lesson over and over again, in fact, what we said earlier, early on in the Course, it says, if you have any problem, it's because you feel separate. feel separate from God, you feel separate from life, you feel separate from other people, and this brings up fear. But the other thing the Course says is the lesson is the same for everybody in every situation because it is always some form of the child of God is innocent. What that means is drop the case right now. Just shred the files, drop the case, because the Course in Miracles says when your case is brought to the higher court, the case will be dismissed. So all your evidence that you have against yourself about how you're not good enough and how you're not this and that, it's just going to be dropped. And all the evidence that you have against somebody else, it's all going to be dropped. What a waste of time. You know you're gathering evidence all the time. You know you have a file on that person, that group of people, right? And then you get together with other groups of people who, I always think of in, what was that? It was the Barbra Streisand movie after Funny Girl, Funny Lady, or whatever, where she's talking to James Caan in the bar, and she says, and they're meeting up, and he's so obnoxious to her, and they're supposed to go into business together, and he's kind of flirting with her, and at one point she says, if you get that suit cleaned and we hate the same people, it's a match. And so many times, our joining together is, we hate all the same people. We're against all the same things. I'm against the meat eaters, I'm against the factory farmers, I'm against the this, I'm against that. Let's get married. Right? So we start to, is this disturbing anyone? Are you okay? I never know how disturbing my talks are because I'm not listening. It's only later that I hear how horrified everybody was. So we make this commitment to recognizing, okay, the lesson in every situation to some degree is that we are not separate from each other and that the Son of God is innocent. And that our peace is going to come from recognizing there's some form of that lesson in here. So you start to look at your life. You look back at your life. I invite you to really do this. Like, get a notebook or get a journal and start looking back at the major aspects of your life. Now, what you will be tempted to do, of course, is only look at the bad things and say, that was a lesson. Well, all the good things were lessons too. That's why we started this out in the meditation of saying, really go inside and see what are the loves of your life. Because those are major lessons. Because those are experiences of who you really are. So you want to look and see, oh, I've learned that generosity works. I've learned that kindness works. That's why if you just boiled it down to the idea of that practicing the Course in Miracles basically meant just be kind, that would be really easy, wouldn't it? I mean, that's a lot of information. You just go, I don't need it because I'm just going to be kind. But then you see how you just don't want to a lot of times. We're just not in the mood sometimes. And that's the essence of, because I've been doing this a long time and been in front of groups for a long time, a lot of times people will come up to me to say something after, or even if they see me around places, and sometimes what people want to do is, because people think I'm funny, they want to say something funny. And 9 times out of 10, the funny thing they say is insulting or negative. But they're trying to make an impression. They want love, and they want to communicate love, but they just feel like it's not enough to just be kind. I have to say something that's kind of snarky or sarcastic or witty or sophisticated. And all that does really is make me feel like, hope I don't run into them again. Right? But if somebody is just kind, then I look forward to seeing them again. And I don't mean complimentary, I mean just kind, like it's nice to see you, what a nice day, just something kind, but we're so afraid. Oh, that's so dull and ordinary. Right? There's nothing more fabulous than just being dull and ordinary. To just be average is so fabulous. Because, the Course in Miracles basically says that special is code for tormented. right? We all want to be special. I'm special. Right? And then you look at the world, at the people who are special, and you think, that's hideous. Right? That to just be ordinarily you is an amazing, wonderful thing to be. And if you just are in a situation where you're just kind, then people look forward to seeing you again. The next time you come, they're not like, oh no, now what's he gonna say? Right? Something that they think is clever and sophisticated and funny. And all of those little negative things, by the way, all of those little things that just are a little bit cynical, all of that is blocking the miracle that you're praying for. All of it. All of those, it's so funny. People live in LA and they hate it here. It's like, get out. Just get out. Get out. It's so easy. Just go. Right? But people feel like, well, I have to live here in order to be in this industry. No, you don't. But that's why you're having trouble in this industry. Because you have the vibration of cynical resentment about LA, and it's like this, and it's like that, and it's like that. Why won't they give me money? Do the math. Figure it out. Does that seem like an open, receptive energy? Right? LA is what you make of it. And there's a lot of love here. There's a tremendous amount of love in LA. I see it all the time, every day. I see people helping homeless people. I see people hugging people at the Starbucks. I see love everywhere all the time in LA. There's a lot of ego here because wherever there's a lot of love, there's always a lot of ego. Because we live in a world of polarity. But you're going to experience whichever you focus on. Roseanne Barr was here like about a year ago in Los Angeles, and she was like pitching a script and trying to sell the show. And so she was tweeting over and over, and I was following her, and she was tweeting over and over again about how horrible LA was and how the suits are all assholes and dicks and they're lewd and they're awful and it's all evil and it's all of Satan. And so I just tweeted her back and I just said, well, LA is really what you make of it. I didn't think she'd even read it. She's got like squillions of followers, and she tweeted me back right away and said, go fuck yourself, Jacob Glass. So I felt honored. Like, to have Roseanne Barr say that to you, that's like a blessing from the Pope. It's like, so, yeah. Yeah. Her show is not on. Right? But we think that. We think we can come in with our attitude about, that's why I say we're always checking and seeing, am I closing my heart? Am I going into this situation? I want to read something here from A Return to Love. I mean, we're talking about love tonight. Who's the queen of love? Duh. So this is, I think, on the chapter on work. Knowing who you are and why you came here, that you are a child of God, and that you came here to heal and be healed, is more important than knowing what you want to do. What you want to do is not the important question. The question to ask is, when I do anything, how should I do it? And the answer is kindly. People don't normally associate business with kindness because business has come to be regarded as simply a tool for making money. Miracle workers are not in business only to make money. They're in business to inject love into the world. That's how we're to think of every aspect of our lives. I am here, and everything in my life is about love and a lesson in love. That's the why of everything. Then, like I said, next week we'll talk about the how of that. But if we just focus, certainly for the next week on looking at what is it that I am currently learning? This is a good question to ask yourself in any situation. I mean, certainly in any situation which brings up any kind of upset in you at all, is what is love trying to teach me here? What is love trying to teach me here? In this time, in this situation, in this way, what is love trying to teach me now? Because the great thing is that the language in the Course in Miracles is so brilliantly, fabulously specific. So it's interesting that in that section on trials, it says that you can make a better choice. It doesn't say the right choice as opposed to the wrong choice, because that we get obsessed with that. Oh, there's a right choice, because then we just make that like sinful. Like there's the holy choice and there's the sinful choice. But no, everything's a process. So it says, what's the better choice? And what that indicates is that you may make a better choice. So the better choice means compared to what you did last time when this came around. So sometimes, in fact, in our progress, the choice that we made the last time was a very good choice, but it took us a long time to make it. Right? We had a resentment for 2 years, then we let it go. So sometimes the better choice this time is not to do something differently, but that the time is radically shortened. So this person says the thing that pushes the button or does the thing that you feel betrayed by or whatever. And so, see, this is what happens as we keep having a more devotional idea about our lives. The gap between stimulus and response widens in our consciousness. In the Course in Miracles, Jesus says, I assure you time and space are under my control. So it's almost like you get to this place where something happens and you feel like time is different now. And within that extended time in your mind, you can make a different choice. Whereas before you would have just said back the smart-ass thing, or you would have just defended yourself, or whatever. Instead, it's like you suddenly go sane. Right? You know, we all have the experience of, I just went crazy and lost it. It's like the miracle is when you just suddenly went sane. Like you go, whoa, I'm having a sane thought. And usually the sane thought is some version of, that thing that I tried 800 times probably won't work this time either. Maybe I'll do something else. Sometimes the something else is just not to do anything, just not to say anything, just for once to just shut up. Right? There's a wonderful little sort of prayer in the Course in Miracles that says, how many people have read the Course in Miracles from cover to cover? I think, isn't Marianne recording the Course? You'll be able to get it on tape. You'll get it on CD. But the thing about I always say, like born-again Christians, in so many ways, have it over New Thought people. Because they have one source material. So they study Christians are studying the Bible. So when anything happens, if they're studying the Bible, then they know something that it says that they can pull out of their back pocket at any given moment. Right? Something happens and they go right to, well, all things are possible with God. Right? Some quote. But in New Thought, we have many, 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 many books. So a lot of times things happen, we go, what book is it? What, I don't know what to do. But if you're a Course in Miracles student, then we all have the same source material. And the more you read it, the more you have these things in your back pocket so that you start to, when something happens, in that miracle gap, something from the Course oftentimes will come to you. So this woman that wrote me, and I had said to her, that lesson, I placed the future in the hands of God, I gave her a bunch of little stuff to say. One, there's a little sort of prayer in the text of the Course in Miracles that says, when anything happens that disturbs you, say to yourself, I do not know what anything, including this, means. Therefore, I do not know how to respond to it, and I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now. That can just save your ass so many times. You have no idea, right? Someone can come up to you and say, I've noticed that you look tired and fat today. Are you okay? And you can go, I don't know what anything, including that, means. Therefore, I do not know how to respond to it, and I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now. Course in Miracles says, the Holy Spirit will teach you to reinterpret everything that you perceive as fearful and teach you that only what is loving is true. So in your mind you go, I know what she meant to say was have a nice day. Let's see. I want to read this little section. This is lesson 127 in the workbook. There is no love but God's. Perhaps you think that different kinds of love are possible. Perhaps you think there is a kind of love for this, a kind of love for that, a way of loving one, another way of loving another still. But love is one. It has no separate parts and no degrees, no kinds nor levels, no divergencies and no distinctions. It is like itself, unchanged throughout. It never alters with a person or a circumstance. It is the heart of God and also of his Son. Love's meaning is obscure to anyone who thinks that love can change. He does not see that changing love must be impossible, and thus he thinks that he can love at times and hate at other times. He also thinks that love can be bestowed on one and yet remain itself, although it is withheld from others. To believe these things of love is not to understand it. If it could make such distinctions, it would have to judge between the righteous and the sinner and perceive the Son of God in separate parts. Love cannot judge. As it is one itself, it looks on all as one. Its meaning lies in oneness, and it must elude the mind that thinks of it as partial or in part. There is no love but God's, and all of love is his. There is no other principle that rules where love is not. Love is a law without an opposite. Its wholeness is the power holding everything as one, the link between the Father and the Son which holds them both forever as the same. No course whose purpose is to teach you to remember what you really are could fail to emphasize that there can never be a difference in what you really are and what love is. Love's meaning is your own and shared by God himself. For what you are is what he is. There is no love but his. And what he is everything there is. There is no limit placed upon himself, and so are you unlimited as well. I'm not going to read the rest of it because it's a couple more pages. But it's that sense of recognizing that love that we are, that love that God is sufficient. It is sufficient. And as we begin to make that more and more the center of our lives, then we begin releasing the world. There's a lesson in the Course that talks about, I loose the world from all I thought it was. And we begin to dissolve the expectations that we had about relationships and love. You know, maybe you had lousy parents. Some people had lousy parents. That's just the way it is. They were abusive, they were this, they were that. Well, if we stay in the story of, I didn't get the love a child should have from their parents, and we keep that story activated within us, then that is one of those areas of life that is the blockage to the awareness of love's presence. And also, a lot of times, the lousy parents were not that lousy, but they just didn't love us in exactly the way we wanted to be loved. They loved us up to a point. They didn't do exactly what we wanted them to do. They didn't accept us in exactly the way we wanted to be accepted. Maybe that was a mate you had. Some story about how, I just didn't receive what I needed. But that's the mystical sort of joke, is that the thing that we didn't receive has been here all along. And if we can really activate it within ourselves, I think when I was here, when we were at the other theater in April, we talked about the Louise Hay book, You Can Heal Your Life, and the importance of what she calls mirror work, where we learn to love ourselves, where that's another thing you can do for homework, is you look in the mirror every morning and you say, and you use your name, I love you, Bob, I love you, Carol, I really love you. Now that seems simple, but somebody I was talking to recently said that they'd heard me say that 20 years ago, so then they finally did it last month. You see the gap between listen, learn, and do? Listen, learn, and then finally when I tried everything else, do. And she said, I looked in the mirror and I said, I love you, and I started to cry. And I couldn't stop crying. So then when my friend came over, I made her do it. And then she didn't stop crying for 4 hours. Right? Because the Course in Miracles makes a distinction between grandeur and grandiosity. Because looking in the mirror and thinking you're hot is not self-love. Because that's not who you are. So a lot of times people who look in the mirror and go, no, I love myself, look at me. A lot of times those people are filled with self-loathing, and that's why they look that way, is in order to try to cover over, because the Course in Miracles says grandiosity is always a cover for despair. It's the smoke screen over despair. And that's why Louise Hay always says, I'm talking about self-love. I'm not talking about arrogance. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that if you look in the mirror and think you're hot, that you're filled with self-loathing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that could be. I'm not saying, no, I'm not saying that. Now I'm just messing with you. But that you're looking past your body. You're looking directly into your eyes, but you're not averting your eyes from your body. You're not hating your body. You're seeing that it is what it is. I mean, I look at this thing and then I go, look what's happened to you. That is really interesting. I don't hate it. I just find it like, wow, that is kind of mushy. That's strange. But it's that beginning to love yourself that Louise Hay, and we talked about this last month, where she said she used to work with people on all their different problems. So someone would come and they'd have a career issue and they'd work on career. And someone would have a health issue and they'd work on health. And someone would have a money issue and they'd work on money. And someone would have a relationship problem and they'd work on relationships. And she said, then I finally realized if we just worked on loving the self, all their problems went away. They just knew how to deal with them once they loved themselves. And that most of our problems are a smokescreen for the fact that we don't love ourselves, or most of our actions that are creating problems are based on the fact that we don't love ourselves, and that we're trying to get it from out there. So it's that essence that, you know, in May, in my classes I did, we called it May Mental Makeover Month. And it was kind of based on that show, What Not to Wear. Did you ever watch that show? Anybody watch that show? I watch TV so you don't have to. It's kind of my job. But if you've ever seen that show, what happens is your friends turn you in to the show for being a slob, basically, to get a makeover, and they turn you over to these two fashion gurus, and they give you a $5,000 Visa card with which to buy a new wardrobe based on what these two fashion people are going to teach you to wear. And so I watched the show for years, and what you realize is that it is never about the clothes. That what happens is when they bring this person in who's dressing a certain way, and they try to get them to change the way they're dressing, and it's always usually for some purpose. It's like I remember seeing what really kicked this off was I can't remember her name, but anyhow, she was a TV star in the 70s and 80s on that show with Michael J. Fox. She was the blonde sister. Tina Yothers. It was Tina Yothers. And Tina Yothers was being made over. And, you know, her family had turned her in and they secretly tape you and stuff. It's fabulous. And basically, there's always a sad moment in the show where somebody says something and you see what they're really thinking. And that is the real problem. It's not what they're wearing. It's the thought they have. And so in her particular case, they put her in a dress. And she said, I don't have any dresses. I never wear a dress. And they said, well, you live in LA and don't you go to events and things, and don't you? And she said, if there's an event I need a dress for, I get out of going to it. Now, don't act like you don't do shit like that. Don't act like there aren't things that you talk yourself out of because of some thought you have that is a limiting thought. And so what they're doing with these people every time is really changing their minds, because they can't actually change their wardrobe until the person is willing to see themselves differently. And that's always the argument. The argument is always the ways in which, watch this too. I've given you a lot of homework. This is more. Watch yourself. Whether you do this out loud with people or you're just doing it at home, catch yourself arguing for your limitations. I can't because. They're not buying scripts right now like that. I'm too old too. I don't have the money to. There's not resources for. There's no one available in this town. All of those that you argue for, that talk you out of your good, they're just ways to block the awareness of love's presence. So with Tina Yothers, it was that this is costing you your life. Your husband wants to go to events with you, but you're not available because you think you're fat and a blob. Right? She was dressing like a blob because she thought her body was wrong. Right? So in May, we did a mental makeover month where we went through and said, start writing down your limiting thoughts as they occur to you. Start journaling them, and then turn them around into an affirmation. Right? So you turn something like, well, nobody's buying scripts from, first-time writers this year. Then you turn that around and go, there are lots of opportunities for people like me. You turn it around. That's why this is called, by the way, new thought. Right? We call it new thought. When's the last time you had one? Most of what we think is just repetitive. Really, when's the last time you went, I never thought that before? Most of the time it's like, well, there's my old friend. Whatever, worry, negativity, excitement, whatever. But new thought is where you take some old limiting thought and turn it around. And we do it a little bit at a time. We're not here to terrify ourselves. We're here to just gently, I call them penguin steps. You take penguin steps. Did you ever see that movie, March of the Penguins? Do you see how far they go taking penguin steps? Well, the whole species, basically, is based on that trip, right? They have to take, and the egg, and the this, and they go all the way, just like, that's a penguin step is like, because that is what keeps the species going. If human beings, we had to do that to keep the species going, there'd be no one in this room, right? Because we're like, I've been looking at that tree for an hour. We're not getting anywhere. This doesn't work. I hate all these other penguins anyhow. This sucks. I give up, right? So we're not terrifying. We take little tiny penguin steps, which is the better choice. It's a better choice. It's not, you don't have to have the most amazing, fabulous spiritual thought anyone has ever had. You just have a little better thought. If you have people who study any of the Abraham material, Abraham Hicks, they talk about the emotional scale. I guess I have to wrap it up here. They have to, I love that. The emotional scale. So at the very bottom of the emotional scale is depression. And at the very top of the emotional scale is like joy and bliss. But there's like 20 emotions between there. And we tend to think, I need to go from depression to bliss. Are you insane? not going to make it from depression to bliss. You know what's above depression? Anger. Anger is actually a more active energy. You know, depression really basically is just anger without enthusiasm. So if you're depressed, you're like, I cannot move off the sofa, I can't eat, I'm eating the carpet, I just can't move, and it all seems hopeless and terrible. And then you have an angry thought, but this isn't my fault, it's because of them. And the next thing you know, you're in the shower with a plan for revenge. You're moving up the emotional scale. But don't stop there. That's the problem, is don't stop somewhere, because most people just bounce back and forth between anger, depression, anger, depression, anger, depression, anger, depression, excitement, anger, depression, right? No, you keep going past anger. You don't act on the anger. It just gets the juices going a little bit. You start blaming and, all that kind of stuff. And then you realize, okay, this helped me from depression, but this is not the end. Now I'm going to move towards frustration. Frustration is higher than anger. And then you work your way up the vibrational scale. So that's what we're doing with our thinking. We don't realize I really am negative, or I really am cynical, I really am this, and get down on ourselves because we're not positive all day long. We just look and say, did I make a better choice at all today? Even one moment of making a better choice where I didn't get angry because that person cut me off, where I didn't respond right away to the email, something that was going to start a whole war, where I just, I took care of myself, where I decided that I was going to eat something that would really nourish me instead of something that I would feel horrible about later. That you just notice, I'm just making better choices because that is what's activating that love within me. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we're going to do a prayer. So get comfortable if you're not already. And again, close your eyes, take a nice deep breath. Just going inside. And once again, focusing on your heart space and knowing that we have all been hurt. We all have reasons that seem very legitimate about why love is not the answer. But together here in this shared energy, we have an ever-growing willingness to start to drop our defenses, to drop our grievances, to drop our shame and our blame, and really to let go of any story that doesn't feel good, so that we can begin to tell a story that does, a story that is gentle and kind, a story that says things like, I place the future in the hands of God. All things are possible for me. More and more I am willing to love and be loved. And that love itself is a beacon that goes out from us now. It begins to feed all of those who are hungering for an experience of oneness, just as we hunger for that experience. I want you to take a moment now and think about the last week or so and find at least 3 ways that you feel that you really were a space of love, whether it was for yourself, for your animals, for another person, for your job, and acknowledge yourself for that. That's who you really, really are. You are that being. Know that that is true about everyone. And as you think now about the week ahead, look now to see, who do you want to be this week? What is the space you want to hold, the attitude, the thoughts? So we surrender all of this now to the Holy Spirit within us, as we also offer our hands and our feet and our voices, asking, where would you have us go? What would you have us do and say, and to whom? We remember now, as always, the way that we will know love And the way that we will feel love is by your love moving through us to the world around us. For this we are thankful, and together we all say, Amen.